Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you here with us. Be sure you come back for more. Actually, looking forward to having you back for more. I know once you get a dose of this, it's hard to go anywhere else. But to my regular listeners, as promised, as the guarantee for this show, you are going to run into some people. You're going to hear from people that are here to help you. They put their story out there in a very transparent, vulnerable, and courageous manner, just because they know they're going to touch somebody out there to help them keep going. So today I have Miss Jeaneen Tang, who wrote a book titled "Play Dumb and Sabotage." You're like, wait a minute, a book that says "Play Dumb and Sabotage." So now it gets your attention, it gets you going, and all that. So looking forward to diving into this conversation with her. Jeaneen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much. It's been a great day so far. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. Happy to have you. And, there's a lot we can talk about from the educator perspective and a lot of things you're doing from an intellectual property perspective and helping the kids and all that. But, me being a former athlete and being very heavily involved in sports and, kind of learning the business and what I do through sports, I want to take you back to your background as an athlete a little bit and kind of talk to us but a little bit about how you grew up, how the, sports kind of shaped your ideas and the way your principles as an adult and things of that nature. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, I started gymnastics when I was 5 years old, and
That's a
I
serious,
joined,
serious sport right there.
yeah, serious
That's
gymnastics, and
Roman stuff right now. I'm a football guy. I'd see you guys from a flexible. I wrote a book titled "Make Your Move," and I interviewed a lot of dancers and gymnasts in terms of just the flexibility. So kudos to you. That's some serious business right there.
I think it's the best sport to have as a foundational sport because it does teach you body awareness. It lets you, manage your own weight, flexibility,
Right,
coordination, balance. And then I competed from age 10 to 15.
right.
And then as I went into high school, I started playing volleyball, I played basketball,
Mhm.
and then I cheered in high school as well because there was gymnastics involved. But it
Right.
was also a great way to keep in physical fitness and everything. And I think, when I was going to high school, the volleyball players, I'm from Hawaii, right? So we had a lot of like Polynesian
Is that where you grew
athletes
up in Hawaii?
in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Mhm.
And I went to the university laboratory school, and we had a very strong volleyball team.
Mhm.
And when I was a freshman, all the seniors, they were like, Samoan, and they had such great like team spirit. And just like I really learned how to cheer on teammates. I learned how to be a good teammate. I learned how important it was to be on top of your game because you didn't want to mess up and let anybody down. And then the same to go with basketball and everything. And I still play volleyball to this day.
Yes.
And I don't play basketball competitively anymore, but I still love playing, and I'm coaching my son's team at
Okay.
the YMCA. So I'm
Yes.
still very involved with that.
Right.
And now I
And
picked
the
up pickleball.
crossover, a lot of people don't understand the crossover between basketball and volleyball is huge. The jumping, the making sure. Actually, there was a time where I was some sort of active with doing NIL deals, but I did an NIL deal with a lady she's a current player named Samantha Lafone. And she plays basketball right now for App State in North Carolina. But back in high school, she was actually a volleyball player as well. And I was telling people, do you work on your jumping, your hand-eye coordination, rebounding, the whole thing. So it is very important. Now, did you go on to play collegiately as well, or was it just a high
I
school?
played in volleyball. I played my junior and senior year. I went to Pacific University in Oregon,
Yes, yeah, I heard them.
and it was, yeah. So I played 2 years there, and then I've played volleyball kind of throughout my 20s, mid late 20s, and then I moved to Los Angeles when I was 29, and
Mm-hmm.
then like for 11 years for some reason I moved to Los Angeles to do acting, and none
I
of my
did
acting
see that.
friends.
Yeah, I did see that. I was like, is that really that was you? Was you? Because I looked you up. I'm like, no, that's not the not the physical speechologist that's acting too. No, that's not her. I thought it was a
I
complete.
know.
I'm glad.
I do all kinds of different things.
I
So
thought it
for
was.
like
So you confirmed it was you. Okay.
it was me.
All right.
So I still do acting, but not as, regularly because I do speech
Yeah.
therapy for the money and acting as I'm in Los Angeles. Everybody's an actor.
That's I can know
So
now that you're saying I can see the connection because what I've learned, and I don't know this for sure, you can confirm this, but when you go to acting school and you get the classes, you have to do that when it comes to the kids. You kind of have to act and you got to make them feel like there's a
yeah,
lot of crossover that I mean, you just offered me some insight. I didn't even realize there's a lot of
absolutely.
turnover
There's a
when it
lot
comes
of,
to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I always say be super animated. You got to be in their world, right? When you're
Yeah,
playing with kids, you
exactly.
have to be able to imagine to be in their world. They're not in our world. We're in their
Right.
world.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
used to tell me all the time because I was the only guy at the actually I'm still technically kind of the only guy at the center, the places I teach. They would tell me get on eye level, make sure you're looking at them. I mean, so many things I was picking up being the only man in this situation. So I mean, man, again, and another insight today. So that's what life is like, listeners, constantly learning. There's never a moment in which you can't be learning something and get yourself around quality people. So anyway, go ahead. By the way, I keep you get me so sometimes I cut people off because
No, no, no.
I'm
Thank you.
talking
I
and
love it.
I start
I
moving on.
love it.
So go ahead. You were
I love
telling us
it.
about your story.
Okay, so for like 11 years when I was in Los Angeles, I didn't play volleyball because none of my acting friends played volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my son in 2012. And, for a couple of years, I was like, I really want to get back into volleyball. And
Mm-hmm.
then in 2016, I was like jonesing one night. I'm like, I need to play volleyball. So I Googled like
Yeah.
volleyball in Los Angeles. I found LA Volleyball Organization and I started playing volleyball since then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was almost 40 at the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I was playing with like 20 something year olds and they
Right.
were like, how old are you? And I'm like, I'll be 40. And they're like, I hope I can play volleyball when I'm
Yeah,
40. I'm
that's it.
like,
I'm glad you said that.
okay.
I'm so glad you said that. Again, and before the educator world, I was in fitness heavily involved. Still kind of consider myself a fitness consultant, and I tell ladies that same thing all the time. Age is a state of mind. It's just a number. If you keep up with your body, keep up with the way you eat, there's no reason like. Just because you're getting older in years does not mean you got to get less fit and things like that. So I'm glad you re-emphasized that point for the listeners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just turned 48 and still
Mhm.
playing volleyball.
You're still doing it, right?
Still doing it. And my co-ed rec league, we are like undefeated this season, which I'm super happy about.
Yeah.
And I'm still playing with 20 and early 30-year-olds, which is
Exactly.
nice.
Exactly.
I like it.
I'm a fan. I think that's really important. Currently I run every morning. I'm training for a marathon, but I still go out 10Ks, 5Ks, half marathons, the whole thing. And again, as former athletes, and I know everyone that's listening to me that is a former athlete need that itch, man. You need something that's going to get you up, competing and get you around, especially when you're building kind of a lifestyle around kids, because these kids, you get out of shape, they will run circles around you. They require require energy, a different type of energy throughout your entire day, full 24 hours. Sometimes feels like 25 hours a day. So, you got to make sure you're keeping up with that kind of lifestyle because they'll take advantage if you just are that teacher or that educator, that parent that's just sitting on their behind. They know they're smart enough to know, okay, that's someone I can take advantage of.
Oh yeah. My son, he's 11 now, he's going to be 12 and he still loves to go to the park, right?
Hmm?
So we might have a long day. I might have gone to work. We might have done a bunch of errands and he's like, "Can we go to the park?" And I can't say no.
Yeah, right.
Let's just
Because you
go,
want him to
right?
be
Let's go.
active, right? You don't want him to have that mentality of, all right, I'm just gonna sit around and watch TV. So, like, these are the years now where you got to build. Like I tell people all the time, my mother was the one that got me into fitness because she'd wake me up 5 a.m. in the morning and we'd go out for a run. And one of the things I actually did talk about in my book is that, the hardest part was waking up. When we come back and we see that sunrise and those things, it's like, that was the hardest part. Now I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted to it simply because, as a mother just like you, making sure, hey, sacrifice, do what you have to do, and take them there so they build these healthy habits with them as they grow up.
Yeah, yeah. My son loves to play. Like I said, I was beginning to say I play pickleball now.
Mm-hmm.
And my son, he has hemiplegia because he had a stroke and brain injury when he was 13 months old. So he
Hmm.
can only use his left hand.
Oh,
So a
man.
paddle sport is great because
Oh,
he can, it's a one-handed sport and
right.
he's really learning eye-hand coordination. He's learning how
Mhm.
to move his feet.
Right.
He's learning to be competitive. Like I
Mhm.
told him, like later on tonight, we're going to go play pickleball at the YMCA. And he goes,
Okay.
I'm going to beat you. I was like,
Yes,
you sure
ma'am. Yes,
will.
ma'am. I like it. I like the mentality. Okay, so you're acting, and then did you just transition it? Because I believe you said you were initially into physical therapy. Did something just come over you that made you want to get into physical therapy and leave acting? How was that transition? What was that transition process like?
So I was already a speech therapist before I was even an actor. So
Okay.
like rewind back when I was 8, my grandfather passed away and I felt really, really helpless.
Huh.
He was not able to do a lot of his own things. He couldn't bathe himself, he couldn't move around. And I remember feeling so helpless and growing up with the need to help people
Yes.
and being like I wanted to be able to have been someone that helped my grandfather before. So I
Right.
thought physical therapy was a very logical thing to go
Mm.
through.
Right.
I wanted to be a teacher at one point. I thought, okay, this might be a great avenue to
Mhm.
investigate. And when I went to college, I knew I wanted to do this therapy or help people.
Mhm.
So, but I needed a master's to do that. So
Yes.
I did my undergraduate work in English literature and creative writing and took a lot of sciences so I could apply to physical therapy school.
Right.
And when I was graduating with my undergraduate degree, everybody was going to physical therapy school. And I was like, do I really want to do that?
Mhm.
Or is there something like, do I want to teach? Do I want to be a professor for English? And
Mhm.
someone had brought up the idea of speech therapy because it did pull from that language side and
Yeah.
it did offer that therapy side of helping people.
Right.
And I hadn't really heard about speech therapy. But come to find out, my friend from elementary school, and she's still my friend now, her mom was a speech therapist. I just didn't know what she did
Right.
for work.
Mhm.
And when I delved into it, I went back to the University of Hawaii and they were actually offering like a stipend. They said, well, if
Mhm.
you work for the District of Education, Department of Education, after you get done with school, then we'll help you pay for school.
Yeah.
So essentially, grad school was paid for.
Okay.
And I thought it was a kind of a no-brainer. Like, well, I'm just going to go to school, then I'm going to work in the schools, and that'll be it.
Mhm.
And then I got the acting itch, and then I had to move here, and then.
Right. Well, at least you weren't just going acting without having that backup plan in case, things didn't work.
Yeah,
And that's another
exactly.
important lesson that the listeners need to take away is you're not just going to go chase these dreams without having something to fall back on, especially a dream like acting where the opportunity or the possibility of you being rejected is incredibly, incredibly high. So you got to have that backup plan as you pursue these things. So, when you decided, what made you decide to go? So you had your son, you said 2015, correct?
2012.
2012, yeah. So 2012, you have your son, and then did you die? See, because one of the things that I've learned, especially being in education now, is sometimes the parents don't see the disabilities until it's too late, or they may be in a situation where the babies are growing up, and you're not recognizing it yet, where the process of getting a diagnosis, the process of actually going through that whole thing can be very tedious. And I know personally, there's a lot of mothers that just kind of shrug it off. They ignore it. No, he's fine. He or she is fine. This, that, and the third. Did you know right away that he had a learning disability and that this is something that you needed to deal with like right now? Or did it take some time for you to kind of see what was going on, go to doctors and stuff like that?
So unfortunately, my son was completely normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then at 13 months, he had a fall from our bed, which was just 18 inches off the ground.
Oh
He
my God.
fell and hit his head, and he hit it the completely perfect way to create a big bleed in his brain.
Oh my God. So,
So
yeah.
there was no cut on his head. Just he cried for a while and then he passed out. We
Mm.
took him to the Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, and they did a CAT scan and found a large subdural hematoma. And they
Oh
did an
my God.
emergency craniotomy, and a few days later, he had a stroke. So,
Oh
unfortunately, he was a perfectly normal child.
no.
And after that, we lived in the hospital for a few months. And, it's been a long road of recovery since then. And
Yeah.
because of the stroke, he has the right sided hemiplegia. He only sees half of our peripheral, so he only sees midline to left.
Hmm.
So he only has 50% of his vision, but he navigates the world really well now.
Right.
Before he would just run into things, he'd be standing someplace and he'd turn and run into a wall or something, or run into somebody if he didn't know it was there. But now he's learned to accommodate, and you wouldn't know he had a disability until like you saw him play a sport like basketball where he can only use one hand, or
Mhm.
um, you know, do something else where he would require two hands, or
Hmm.
climbing or something.
Well, first of all, my condolences. That has to be something I could only imagine living through. That I remember one time I saw my niece hit her head on the bed, and my heart damn near dropped. I can only imagine. I can only imagine having to go through that and live in a hospital for months and months and months. But it ultimately, was it that led you to decide, hey, I want to be someone that speaks on this. I want to be someone that takes this terrible situation that happened to him, but be someone that can be a pioneer and teach other mothers that are going through the same thing, teach other educators. Did you have that immediately, or did it take some time for you to say, all right, this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, and I'm gonna, how did that process go to where you were able to get out of what I'm sure was maybe some victim mentality there and say, no, I'm gonna be a pioneer and I'm gonna do this the right way. I'm gonna be someone that's an advocate for these kinds of things.
Yeah, I don't think I sat in that, I wasn't depressed about it.
Good.
It was something action
Yeah.
gets you out of any kind of depression, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
putting yourself into action and looking at the positive, right? He's alive.
Yes.
Um,
Yes,
he can
absolutely.
do
1000%.
things,
Right.
all those things. So thinking the positive always kept me out of the darkest places.
I
You
love
have
that.
one
Yeah.
toe in and you like pull it out because
I
you got to
love,
keep moving,
yeah,
right?
love that.
Um, I've always wanted
I know
to.
I couldn't do that, so I commend you. I'm not a bitch. I don't have kids yet, but I know just the having a niece and nephew, and when I used to see them, like one time I threw my nephew up and I tried to show off and threw hands behind my back, and I had to catch him like right before. To this day, it bothers me. Like to this day, if I didn't throw my hands like right there, and my mom saw it, she goes, when he grows up, I'm gonna tell him your uncle was a bust. So like I was joking, but I'm like, yo, to this day, I'm so afraid of that stuff. So again, kudos to you for having the mentality of, look, I'm not gonna wallow in self-pity. We're gonna fix it right now.
Yeah, I think you don't know what you're capable of until you're in it, right?
Yeah,
So I'm sure that you would have that mentality if you were put in that situation.
right. You have
Hopefully, right?
hopefully hope.
Um, Hopefully. But I think also working, having my son have a disability, and
Mm-hmm,
then I do early intervention. I've been doing early intervention for so many years now, like
mm-hmm,
seeing so many children who there are a number of children who have a true learning disability, a true communication disability, whether it be autism, whether it be something else. But
mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of those kids who have parents who just didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't
Yeah,
know the strategies to
right,
teach language, to interact, to
right.
communicate with their children. And
Mm-hmm,
they also had that little bit of denial, right? Like, oh,
exactly.
my kid's going to be fine. They're going to catch up. They're going to catch up. They're going to be fine. And then early intervention is from 0 to 3 years old.
Mm-hmm,
So sometimes they're like, okay, well, now they're 2.5 and yeah, they're not talking. So I'm going to get some help. But
mm-hmm.
then it becomes too late. So I
Yeah.
think seeing too many kids that fall into that situation really pushed me to want to create a greater impact and an
Mhm.
outreach to
Right.
write the book, write a handbook. I've used the term play dumb and sabotage throughout my almost whole speech career because, kids like to be smart, right?
Right.
And we as parents, caregivers, teachers, educators, we're pretty smart already. We're adults. We should know things, right? But we
Exactly.
need to play dumb to make them feel that the kids are smarter than they are, kind of in a way, right? So if you say like I like to ask absurd questions,
Mm-hmm,
like for my little kids, I'll be like, does a dog say baba?
mm-hmm,
And they're like, what? Or like I might give them the wrong thing, like, oh, here's a teddy bear, and I'll give them a completely different toy or something. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Or like for snack time, I think snack time is a really great example where you can play dumb and sabotage, and
Yeah.
you can give a child a little bit of a snack, and
Mm-hmm.
then create an opportunity, sabotage them by having them request for more,
Mm-hmm.
having to save more or sign for more or indicate that they want more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just wait for them to be served, right? A lot of kids are given everything that they need and they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to ask. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I think it's like, just being able to teach
Mm-hmm.
parents and caregivers, even, educators
Yes.
and other speech therapists, like what are the simple strategies we can implement
Yeah.
to decrease the number of children that need speech therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
also how to work with kids who really do require extra attention.
Right. And this isn't even work with, I mean, it works obviously with kids with disabilities, but I'm talking about kids that have is perfectly fine, are normal. If you do these kinds of things that she's telling you to do, it'll lead to more interaction. All right. You don't want to be that adult that's only just telling them what to do and how to do things, but you want to sort of play dumb, as she says. You want to be that, like, I can tell you from my perspective is being the only guy in so many situations. I had to be the one that was really goofy. I had to be the one, making jokes with the kids, and their interaction increased. Now they trust you. Now they understand, hey, this is an adult, but he's also making sure I'm meeting them at my level and things like that. And, I want to, give you the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into some of the principles in the book when it comes to, like, what are some of the practical ways? You already mentioned a few when it comes to like the lunch and stuff like that. What are the practical ways that if it's a parent that's listening in that maybe not even be able to afford to send them to a daycare and have professionals or anything like that? What are some of the practical things that they can be doing every single day so it's them and their son or their child that has their thing that they know, hey, this is going to be us. Like me and my mother, we had the running thing, the cardio thing. We have this connection and we're going to have that connection for the rest of our life. What are some of the
Mhm.
things that they can take away from your story or your book or whatever in terms of how do I create this connection with my child so I know that they're going to be all right regardless and we're going to have that thing because they got to grow up at some point. And, that letting go of the kid is the toughest part. So, what can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, or one of the key things, is just to slow your speech down,
Mm-hmm.
right? As adults are talking to children, sometimes adults don't slow their speech down, and it's almost like listening to a foreign language to kids because we have to be able to understand before we can express. So
Mm-hmm.
if you just slow your speech down just a little bit and you talk to them with eye contact and use expressive facial expressions and gestures and be animated,
Mm-hmm.
then they're really going to connect that. They're going to see it visually, they can hear it auditorily. And I like to do like I'll clap out syllables, I'll tap out syllables on them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do things in a sing-songy. You can make any nursery rhyme into, you can put any sentence into a nursery rhyme, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll help to connect the language side of the brain, which is the left, and the music side, which is the right.
Right.
So if you think about it, we can remember songs that we learned in elementary school, right?
Yep.
But can you remember like a speech that you had to write in high school?
No,
Probably not,
not
right?
a problem. No.
So it's like that ingrained musical aspect of it helps to reinforce anything that you're learning. Um, that's really important, just to have that play.
Mm-hmm.
And then also when they're learning vocabulary, it's really important to know that they don't know what they haven't been introduced to.
Right.
So if you're getting them dressed in the morning, I think a lot of parents are like, this is what they're going to wear. They're going to wear this outfit, right? As they get a little bit older, you can ask them, even if they're not even that old, they can, be under one. You can be, oh, are we going to wear the blue shirt or the green shirt? And
Mm-hmm.
have them at least shoulder width apart. And
Right.
they can see like, this
That's
is
good.
blue,
Yeah.
this is green.
Yeah.
Or are you going to wear the white socks or the red socks, whatever it is? Or
Mm-hmm.
what should we eat today? Should we have an apple or banana? So
Yeah.
it's always providing the vocabulary and also the visual items that go with it.
Right.
And
And it
even if they
also,
can't,
yeah, it's
sorry,
easy
even
to
if they
make their
can't
own.
talk,
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if they can't talk, they can look, right? So a
Mm-hmm.
child might not be able to say apple, but they might look towards the apple. And
Mm-hmm.
then the parent can speak for them in a sense. They say, oh, apple, let's eat an apple today. And
Yeah.
then they can, have that conversation with
Mm.
themselves
Yeah,
as if they were the child.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I love how it gives them the power to make their own decisions. That's the one thing I really have learned being in this space now is when you give kids those options, the developmental process and the way they develop is something that is it's the reason we're in this, to see them develop, to see them actually get better and do things that they were not expected to do. And that's really what that's really what it's all about. That's really the thing that keeps me going to the school every single day, is seeing kids develop and develop and develop, and just proving that, breaking these barriers that so many adults place in front of them, because the system is it's so rugged, man. The system is just really, really cutthroat. When you're talking about disabilities, and you were listening to Catherine, so you probably heard me tell the story about, there was a center director that had an autistic child, and she goes and tells the dad that we don't have any more space because she doesn't want to deal with all of that. So the system is so, in my opinion, wrong when it comes to how we care for the disability kids. How do you recommend a parent who has a child with disabilities? How do you recommend they pick the child's care center? What kind of questions should they be asking when it's time to send them off to school, or when it's time to send them off to do certain things? What kind of advice do you give those parents that are trying to figure out who or how to trust other people with, obviously, their baby that they're putting a whole lot of work in, that's going to require some attention?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to make sure that the parents are accessing whatever services they are
Mhm.
eligible for
Yeah.
first. Make sure they are hooked up with early intervention or school
Mhm.
age services. When they are interviewing schools to
Mhm.
place their child in, you really do want to see, do the teachers and the directors have experience with children with disabilities, and
Mhm.
how do they what do they think about inclusivity, right?
Mhm.
Because at a preschool, you're going to have all kinds of children, normal developing kids, children with disabilities,
Mhm.
and you don't want them to be, excluded from participating.
Right.
You want to see if they're going to be like adults to support that child
Mhm.
throughout the day,
Yeah.
and also what kind of teaching strategies they have.
Right.
You know, how do they present language? How do they um, reinforce what is being taught?
Mhm.
What is their schedule? How are they able to uh, be keep on schedule? And if there's a change in the schedule, how do they deal with that? Because children on the spectrum often, they need their schedules, but
Yeah.
if they are taught in the correct way how a schedule can change,
Mhm.
or be told ahead of time that this isn't what's going to happen, on Wednesdays we usually do this and this and this, but today it's going to be a little bit different. They
Mhm.
just need to know that, how to set up that expectation
Mhm.
in order to, head off that any kind of meltdown or breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because that schedule change is something I've experienced personally. That when it happens with a kid, I mean, I remember we have a kid who we had it was like the summer, and the zoo, they were bringing in all types of activities like petting zoo and all that kind of stuff. And because he was on the spectrum, he didn't eat at this hour. He's having his tantrum and going crazy. And then again, these are the things that led to him ultimately getting kicked out. And again, if you would have known, or if there would have been just simple communication or have access to some of the work you've done, you could have communicated that with a teacher like us or some of the teachers and said, you have to make sure so and so knows that this schedule is going to be like this. Make sure it's structured. And yes, educators, it might require a little bit of extra work on your
Mm-hmm.
end, but it's necessary to avoid these things. And these are things I had to actually learn on the fly, Jeanine, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't know. They hired me because of my sports background and because I could do a bunch of fun, cool stuff with the kids. But when it gets to these kids that need certain things, I didn't know. And I was just being Mr. Eyes One and just lashing out. And it turned into so many blow ups that as I'm growing in this industry, I'm realizing, okay, it's important to communicate as best you can with the parents. And on the flip side of that, as parents, you have to make sure you are speaking up. You cannot be that parent that's shy and, doesn't want to necessarily ruffle any feathers. The communication between parent and teacher needs to be like wide receiver and quarterback, man. It got to be like fluid. It got to be fluid because this is a job for all of us, and it's all of our responsibility to raise these kids and at least put them in the right, give them the best opportunity to succeed. So I know I went on a tangent there, but that happens on this show quite a bit too.
No, I think that definitely parents need to be educated, and
Yeah.
otherwise the school and the school system's just going to kind of run them over when
Mm-hmm.
they have like their
Right.
individual education plan. Because I've worked in schools where they're like, oh, well, the parents don't know the procedures. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know what their rights are.
Mm-hmm.
So the meeting goes as smoothly as the school wants it to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And the parents are sent on the way because they don't know what to ask for. They don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, like as a mom and a speech therapist, I worked in the schools in Hawaii for 4 years, in LA for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And when my son had to have his first IEP,
Mm-hmm.
the school district knew I was a speech therapist, but they
Mm-hmm.
were still trying to lowball his therapy time. They were trying to give him as little services as possible. And I
Yeah.
was like, I was appalled. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, we are going to get an advocate and we are going to reconvene this meeting because
Exactly.
this is not okay.
Right. And you were stern. We actually just lost a kid. Well, not like lose them to they're still alive, but the kid's no longer coming to the school. I don't want to put that out there. But the kid is no longer coming to school because the mother, who, like you, has dealt with disabilities, and we actually held her back this year, and she wanted IEP. She wanted that. And again, the school wouldn't cooperate. So she took her daughter out to school. And sometimes, again, as much as I loved her, I'm going to miss her this year, but sometimes a parent, you got to do what you have to do, because much as she loved being at the school and we as teachers loved her, if they're not going to provide the right resources, parents, you have to stand firm on your principles and say, I'm going to be having to make decisions that are going to be beneficial for my child the rest of their life. This school is trying to, their bottom line is just pass kids on, get them graduated, and bring in the next batch. That's the way it's set up. So there's a conflict, and there needs to be a firm standing on your principles. Make the decisions that are going to be beneficial for your child in the future. That is what they're going to appreciate, and that is what your responsibility is. You've got to do that. I cannot stress the importance of that enough. Speak to a lot from, even from a coach's perspective, the dads, from football dads to, newborn parents to parents of toddlers. Man, listen, Jeaneen, I've been through it. I've gone head to head with a lot of kids, and I've spoken to a lot of parents, and this is the fundamental thing I see them missing, is letting that system trample over them, and they don't stand firm. So that is very, very important. So, with all that being said, can you kind of talk a little bit about what do you have coming down the pipeline? What's next? Where do you see this whole thing kind of being your, like, what's your master plan for your next move and things like that?
Well, my book is an ebook as well, and it
Mhm.
just got recorded as an audiobook. So
Oh, there we go. Cool.
the
I'm doing the same thing. I'm different. I actually recorded it myself, so it was a lot more time consuming for me than I was listening to.
yeah, yeah. So I just got, yeah, I actually I thought about recording it myself,
Mhm.
but it would take a longer amount of
Yeah,
time, and
time
it
consuming.
was
I don't have
just
kids, so
time
yeah.
consuming. Yeah, I know. It was just financially better for me time wise to
Uh-huh.
get someone to record it, and now it's up and it's out.
There we go.
Um yeah, it's out there, and so now I'd like to do like maybe do an online training. I'm reaching out to a lot of the preschools in my area to do
Mhm.
like staff training, because
Right.
it really, along with some parent training. I'm at the
Yeah.
local YMCA's here to do
Right.
parent trainings. As the school year is opening up, I'm going to be doing some staff trainings at some preschools, some
Mhm.
education centers, and then I would like to do and create like an online platform as well.
Mhm.
Either online conference or be a guest on an online conference,
Yeah.
and just to create that greater impact.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to market my book as the next baby shower gift.
I
Think
would be,
it's
yeah.
it's
I
a
would
really
think so.
good.
Yeah,
All my
because
friends that are
again, like I
having
was saying, it's
kids.
not just for kids that are parents that have kids with disabilities. This is something that every single parent can use when it comes to just how you communicate with them, how much they're gonna love you, how much you're able to really dumb yourself down, speak to them, to pretend, go back to when you were 3 years old and try to think about the way they actually interpret and take in information, and go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's literally for every every parent, every educator, every new speech therapist, because I wrote it in a very conversational way. It's a very easy read.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest takeaways for parents is don't ask yes or no questions unless you're ready to honor that no.
Mm,
Because oftentimes, like, oh, are you ready to do this? Or can you do this? Or
mm,
would you like to do this? And if the kid says no, then you really have to honor that no. Otherwise, then
mm.
what is their no really worth, right?
Exactly.
So
I stand
that's
firm.
when you,
Right.
yeah, that's when you offer, do you want to do this or this? Or we're
Hmm.
going to do these things today. Which one do you want to do first?
Hmm.
So it's, and, or if I'm having a kid, like we're working on vocabulary or articulation, I'm not going to say, can you say this? I'll be like, say this and whatever it is,
Right. Right.
so it's strategies that everybody, it's applicable to
Exactly.
every child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out and hear more?
I have my website. It's playdumbandsabotage.com. And I'm also on Instagram at playdumbandsabotage, or at my personal one is at JT808.
All right. And all of that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Jeaneen, the final thing I do with all my guests is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are, let's see, you are back, I guess, 20s. You are just like life is getting really, really difficult. I want you to go back to the younger 20-year-old version of you, I guess, no, like right when you had your son and things are just coming down. You just got the diagnosis. Pretend that that young Jeaneen has come into the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
I think that don't think about what people think about you.
Mm,
Don't think so much about what people think about you, because people really aren't thinking about you that much. And just move forward and do your best.
yes, take it day by day. And again, the reason you regular listeners know this, but for you newer listeners, the reason I do that to close out the shows is because if there's anybody that's in that situation, is going through it, is having a difficult time in that situation or whatever you're going through, they're speaking to you. We're speaking directly to you. Just move forward. Don't think so much. Just move forward. Take it moment by moment. I promise you, if you stay with that mentality, you will get there. All the things, your goals, you will figure out a way to get yourself out of there. So, all that being, again, appreciate your time. Appreciate the work you do, man. Keep it up. Everyone out there, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.